Welcome, everyone. It is Irene Lyon here, and today we have a very special call, a special joining of my alumni, 9 of my alumni, my SmartBody SmartMind alum. Just to give us a date, it's the 19th of September. That's the year 2022. And today is our final day for registration for SmartBody SmartMind. As a quick reminder, because some of you might be watching this on YouTube, SmartBody SmartMind is a 12-week program that I created many years ago. And this round, it's our 12th round. And some of our alum have been around for many years. Some of you are a little newer. And so we'll hear if all the alum remember when they joined. I'll get you to mention that when you introduce yourself, what year you came in roughly. What else do I want to say? This program has changed my life. It's changed their lives, lives of folks all around the world. I want to really stress that this program is more than just a 12-week thing. It is a lifestyle. It is a way of healing, a way of health. Often folks ask, why are people redoing this over and over again? And a lot of people go, the course must not be good if people have to come back and do it over and over again. And I understand that confusion, because this is more than just like a semester at, say, school. It's in many ways a graduate degree in your life, in your healing, in mastering your nervous system. So these lovely folks will talk to that. And I'll just dig in. We'll start. And I'm seeing all of you, I think, on my screen. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick alum rather than them starting themselves. And I might start with Janet. And Janet, I don't know when you started, but it was a while ago. And Janet, just to give a quick note, she is a master energy healer, a Reiki master, a psychic medium. We've talked about her and I past life trauma. We've done some interviews together. Janet, do you want to just give a quick introduction, a couple minutes, who you are, where you are, if you'd like to share, and how this work has shifted and worked for you, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was 7 years ago that I joined fall of 2015, before it was SBSM. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a minute. And so as Irene mentioned, I'm a master healer, quantum creatrix, channel, psychic medium, and I currently run a basically magical trade school for the healing and intuitive arts. And Irene's work has been such an integral part of this journey. And as she said, it's something that has integrated into my life. It wasn't like this one and done moment. It's something that, I went through the whole program. I incorporated the elements of it, the ones that really resonated with me, into my life. And as a result of that, I mean, there's been so many shifts. So it's really hard to just say this one thing happened. I'm more grounded. I'm more embodied. I manage triggers better. My communication is better. My relationships are better. I mean, it goes on and on. And so I noticed it so much in my personal life, but I also noticed it in my professional life. And it allowed me to be a better space holder. It allowed my intuition to open up even more, because I was way more embodied. And so as I had that deeper embodiment, I could go even further out that way. And it has allowed me really to do the work I'm doing of managing this very large year-long school that I'm doing, because I'm resilient. I'm able to manage hard things in a way that I didn't used to be able to handle them. Mm-hmm. When things arise, whether in my professional life or my personal life, I can navigate them. I don't necessarily get caught up in the drama of it anymore. I'm like, here's this thing. What do I need to do? What emotion needs to process? What do I need to look at? What are my steps for moving forward? And so it's become this very interwoven, I would say Irene's work is very interwoven into the fabric of my life.
Thank you. And you're also one of our panelists here who's a mom, so that you could be a person to answer questions about kiddos if anybody has them. I'm going to just go to the next person over. Donnie, can you give people a little bit of your information, where you came from, how you got into this work. Donnie is actually, interestingly enough, the only person out of our panel that I've met in person. We met before SmartBody SmartMind even existed. He and I were in a coaching learning environment, learning how to be our own bosses and entrepreneurs. And you, my dear, were one of the only, not only, but one of maybe 5 that got curious about the nervous system work, and we've been connected ever since. So welcome, and let people know a little bit about you and some of the shifts and changes.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. So I am based out of Oakland, California. And as Irene mentioned, I've known her since 2013, 2014, but I didn't actually go through her program until I think March of 2020. And at that time, it was like my system was all over the place. I was working too much. And then the pandemic happened. And about halfway through the pandemic, I'm like, I need to find a way to not drive myself crazy, and really navigate all of the world events that were happening at that time. So I dove into the program then. And what I found is that so much of my life has almost flipped on its head. I've gone through a divorce, which has actually been the easiest divorce possible. I am doing more of the work that I love. I have an interest in music and the arts again. So I have a keyboard that was sitting in my closet for maybe 5 years. And I've started playing and about to start working with a piano teacher. My appetite is naturally changing. So now I'm drawn to just eating more healthy foods versus, feeling like I need to shame myself into eating something healthy. And I was a personal trainer for a while and working in healthcare. So I know all of the things that I needed to do. But with so much of the work that I've been doing with Irene and through her programs, it feels like I'm just becoming more in alignment with what's best for me and my system and where I want to go.
Thanks, Donnie. And Donnie is also integrating this work into his practice with his clients in coaching and leadership. So for anyone who is here who's a coach or working in an avenue with other people, he could be a person to ask a question to around that as well. So thanks, Donnie. And I'm super stoked to hear you're starting to play piano. That's great. Jen is just above Donnie on my screen. You are in Canada, and you and I did an interview a little while ago. And what was so touching is you said to me, you might not still be here if it wasn't for SmartBody SmartMind. So can you just share a little bit about who you are, where you are, what you do, and what was going on that led you to need to heal so desperately?
I'd love to. I'm Jen. I live on Prince Edward Island in Canada, and I found Irene's work in 2015. I believe I started the fall of 2015 as well, Janet. So we started the same time. And I was in crisis. I was in really, really bad shape. And I really hadn't put together the dots yet that it had been trauma after trauma after trauma in my life that had led to my body just stopped. And I had a really hard time eating. I had a really hard time drinking. And I had a really hard time accessing healthcare because of where I was. So I was searching for answers because I was desperate at that time. And I was sick of just sitting around in my house waiting for my life to come to an end at 32. I wasn't ready yet.
Mm.
So we happened to have a mutual friend on Facebook, which is how I found you in the first place. And then what was New Inner Game at that time, and now SmartBody SmartMind, was available in the coming months. And I'd watched everything you had on YouTube. At that time, you could still watch all the videos on your YouTube channel. And your work resonated with me so deeply because you didn't just explain how it worked or what you could do to help yourself improve, but the why of it. Mm-hmm. And for the first time in a really long time, I no longer felt broken. I felt like my body was responding completely appropriately to everything that had been going on in my life. And that gave me such a sense of empowerment that had been lacking and really put me back in the driver's seat of my journey through life. And now I'm able to put the work to use in every aspect of my life. Like Janet was saying, like my relationships have improved. I also noticed an enormous leap in my intuition, so much so that I have done the professional and personal development to get myself to a professional level where I'm now offering services as an intuitive. But I also work at a farm to keep myself really grounded, hands in the soil, and have great access to food and help feed my community. And I talk about this work with everyone in my life. I'm sure they must get tired of hearing your name because I bring you up all the time because it's applicable in every scenario. And not only did you save my life, but you enriched it so much, just offering this framework and this template to work off of and how to see the world in a way that makes sense and values our own experience as we go through it.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here and doing work and farming and it's so good. Selden, you're right next to her. Let us know your journey. You and I recently did an interview, just for those who may be recognizing you, that's quite new. You have been living with and have been healing lupus, which is an autoimmune condition. You're also a mama, and I know that that's greatly changed through this work. So introduce yourself, Selden, and let people know how you got into this and what has been one or four or five of the bigger takeaways.
Yes,
Yeah.
So I've been living with, really I was living with lupus since I was 13, although I wasn't diagnosed until I was 40. And I was trying to heal the symptoms that I was experiencing for a good 10 years before I found Irene. And a lot like what Janet and Jen were saying, I would say I had sort of these core symptoms that they diagnose as lupus or that they see as lupus, but I had other branches of things that were affecting my life that I at the time didn't realize it's all connected. And I knew intellectually that we have one body, right? And so nothing is really separate, but I didn't understand that the missing piece was this nervous system, and that by healing this one piece, all these other branches, like Janet was saying, the relationships, being a better parent, came more online for me. And yes, my symptoms from lupus also healed. So it was a plethora of things that happened. And I just did this for the first time in 2021. So, and granted, I had done a lot of work on my body. I'd done a lot of detoxification. I changed my diet. I did a lot of things, but I hit a plateau in my healing where I was still having flares, and all those other branches I was talking about of dysfunction in my life as a whole, and having a clear direction for my future wasn't online yet. And so until I did the nervous system work. And so when I did that work, like I said, my body aches and pains went away. I no longer, I would say I'm no longer in non-functional, obviously in non-functional freeze, AKA sort of that lupus fatigue that people experience that is debilitating, really. And so I don't have those anymore. And also I can listen and pay attention and have compassion for my body and its ebbs and flows in a very different way. Because I would say maybe the core foundation for what has changed in me is that I actually have compassion again. Because with my nervous system dysregulation, I didn't realize this until it healed itself, but I had lack of compassion, for my kids, for my ex-husband, and lack of compassion for myself. So there was a lot of shame. There was a lot of victimization stories and things like that. And again, I went into SBSM wanting to heal from lupus, but all these other things healed as a result of it. So really the list goes on and on.
Thank you. I think one of the things I also loved in our stories together, Selden, is how you no longer fight with your ex.
Yeah.
So even though you are separated and divorced with someone who's triggering to you, it actually is much easier to communicate because, again, you're in that regulated state.
Yeah. And
so
it's
that's
interesting.
Very good.
I actually have compassion for him now in a different way,
Mm-hmm.
and his story and his past. So my lens is totally different, you know, and I respect him. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Darla, you're up here, and Darla, I'm not sure when you started, so you'll have to remind me, but you are someone that had a fairly significant accident a little while ago, and that really ricocheted in your life into a lot of chronic troubles. And so please let people know who you are, when you started, and a brief history and how this has shifted your ability to, from what I know, heal and function in ways that doctors said you wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, that's correct. Hi, I'm Darla. I live in Enumclaw, Washington. If you like Mount Rainier, I'm the last town you can go through before you get there. So anyway, yeah, I was an extremely active person. I've always been very healthy and rarely ever got sick at all. And in 2010, I had a car accident that didn't seem like it was that bad at first. I mean, it hurt my neck, but then as I just wasn't getting better. And so finally they did an MRI and found out I had a tear in my spinal cord area. So it's not the cord itself, it's the sheath around the cord, and it filled with fluid. So it interferes with all of your nervous system. It gave me really bad neuropathy and just a whole mist of things. Anyway, because it was done on the job, LNI was in charge. And I want to relate to people who feel like when you go through something like that, I kept being told, you look fine, everything looks fine. You know, everybody kept telling me it was all in my head. You know, I went to a psychiatrist and she said, no, it's not in your head, Darla. It's really, truly in your body. Something's not right. And I went through, 2016 is when I finally got away from LNI. And that ended with seeing a multi-injury specialist because LNI did not accept all of the injuries. They only treated part of them. And he told me that was the problem, that it had totally screwed up my nervous system, that it no longer knew how to respond. By that point, the tear in the spinal cord is the main one they didn't want to accept. It didn't know how to respond anymore. So by that point, I was in stage 3 of adrenal fatigue. I had fibromyalgia. I had just a long list. I mean, there's probably 20 different things on there. By that point, every 2 weeks, I was having a new kind of symptom. My legs weren't working right, severe muscle spasms and cramps and just all kinds of stuff. It's just a long list. The long and the short of it is then at that point in the fall of 2017, I came across some of your videos through a friend of mine who had found one on YouTube, and I watched all of it. And then all of a sudden things started clicking in my head. I get it now. This is what's happening. I'd already been told it was my nervous system, but I had no idea. I had birth trauma. I had developmental trauma. I just had trauma, like she was saying earlier, trauma after trauma after trauma in my lifetime. And so finally it was like, okay, affirmation and your support from your team in the beginning for me was the biggest part because I had been told over and over so many times, this is all in your head. It was like, I knew it wasn't in my head, but I couldn't prove it. And finally I started getting proof. It was like, aha, so this is what's happening. This is what's happening. So the education part is huge because it really gives you a sense of understanding, and it takes away the fear because I lived in constant anxiety by that point. At this point today, I rarely ever have anxiety. It's really, really, really rare. And I've learned how to listen to my body. For me, that was super hard. Just learning how to relax. That was another major part for me, was learning how to pace and the listening to your body. It took me several years to figure that out. That's why you have to go through this over and over. It's because it's not just learning, it's learning how to apply, and your body can't do it all at once. It just simply cannot handle it. It can't. And for those of us who have deal with the fatigue issue, you have to be able to rest and give your body what it needs. And that was something I never did. I was a caretaker, and I was highly active in taking care of other people. I worked as a manager, administrative manager, just went through a lot of different losses and stuff. But the long and the short of it for me at this point is I believe it did save my life because of where I was at. If I would not have found you, I don't think I would be alive today. I really don't. Because my fatigue, the adrenal fatigue, I was just starting to head into organ shutdown at that point. So it was dramatic. It was very dramatic for me. And the first month, the symptoms stopped. No more new symptoms. And it's taken several years. I know, hooray. At this point in this last year, I'm trying not to cry because this is pretty emotional for me. In this last year, I have actually felt my body finally say, I'm ready to heal. And it's starting to heal. This last round that we did of SBSM, I could feel it. I could really feel my body saying, this is working for me now. It's working for me now. You're listening to me. When you did that new layers lesson, my body I started crying, tears of joy, because it was like, you notice me, you see me, you hear me. I love this. It was so amazing. And this just happened a couple of days ago, which is one reason why it's emotional for me with the neuropathy. I have had that feeling of cutting all the time in my hands and my feet. The only way I knew I was injured was by seeing the blood, because it was just that intense. And just a couple of days ago, I accidentally cut my finger and I felt it right when it happened. And it was like, wow. I had no idea that it had healed enough at this point that I could actually feel again. It's just, it's fascinating what happens. And it is a lifestyle. I love Seth's music too, because I do a lot of the exercises that I've really integrated, like the adrenal fatigue, because the kidney adrenal exercises are a really big one for people who deal with a lot of fatigue and the early childhood stuff. And so I do that one a lot, pretty much every day. And I do one of them every day anyways, but I like his music with it because then it helps my body to relax and it just integrates everything. And it's just something you practice all the time. And like someone else was saying earlier, I tell everybody, I know they get tired of hearing it sometimes, but I have it's called syringomyelia, where there's the tear in the cord. And I've told everybody that I know that has it, because we all go through that. That particular, mine's traumatic syringomyelia, but a lot of people are born with it. And they're told that all the time. Doctors don't know what to do. They don't know enough about the nervous system to help you with those things. They just don't know. At first I was really angry because I thought, why can't you help me? And then now I realize they just don't know. Not even neurosurgeons, none of them. They don't know. They just don't know. It's too complicated. And so for me, they told, when I quit in 2016, they told me that was as good as I was ever going to get. And I was just going to have to learn how to live with it, because mine is small enough and where it's located to do any kind of treatment for it would be paralysis for me. Arms or legs, they're not willing to risk that. So they just don't touch it. They just kept telling me you have to learn to live with the pain, and it's chronic pain. But at this point, after doing SBM since 2017, I don't have as much of the chronic pain. In fact, this past year, which is another reason why I know I'm healing, I've been able to let go a lot of my pain medicines. I don't have to take a lot of that stuff anymore. The only one there's just a couple that I still have to take a little bit of, but I'm also one of those people that don't do medicines. So I've had to learn to do natural things, which is why it was so empowering for me to find you, because it was like, okay, this is something that I've always been a can-do person anyway. I can do this. I have no idea how much I'll heal. I know that that's not going to completely heal. That injury is permanent. It'll be there forever. But I've still gained a level of functionality, energy, endurance, the capacity to be able to handle my emotions better, pretty stable with that, really. There's not a whole lot that really gets to me a whole lot anymore. And like I said, the anxiety's gone. All that was lifelong for me. So
Yeah.
that's huge. And I'm not a spring chicken. So that's a big deal. I mean, you're talking over 50 years worth of, all that stuff in there. I was 50 when the accident happened. So after 50 years of living in constant anxiety to not have it, that's a big deal.
It is a big deal. Thank you, Darla.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you kept going and you kept having hope. And it's a testament that A, this takes time, but also B, the body is designed to heal when we give it the right stuff. So I'm really glad you stuck with the journey and we found you. It's so cool to hear these shifts and changes. Thank you. I'm going to go down to John on my screen here. John is, again, of course, one of our alum, one of our biggest fans. And John, let everyone know how you got into this work. What was some of the big aha moments for you with your world and what you were doing in your work even?
Work back then or work now?
Well, I know that you were, I should say not work, but what you were really exploring with psychedelics and plant medicines.
Yeah. Well, I was living in Thailand at the time. I'm in Peru now. And I was working, this is before I found Irene stuff. And I've been working with some life coaches who worked with psychedelics. So we did a mushroom ceremony together and they told me a whole bunch of horrible stuff. And this is 3 months before I found Irene's thing, like twisted, messing with someone's head kind of stuff. And I wouldn't say it went that deep, but after 3 months, I started talking about it with some friends and family. And I started to realize how I'd been basically manipulated for 2 or 3 months. And then I was in a relationship at the time and they were working with my girlfriend as well. They'd gotten in her head and gotten her to think I was dark and all kinds of stuff. And somewhere around that time, I looked up, I think I was on Google, looked up TRE, which is the shaking thing, and somatic experiencing, because my sister had just started sessions with a somatic experiencing person in Brisbane. And found Seth has an article, Irene's husband has an article on TRE and somatic experiencing, why TRE is maybe not so ideal. So I read that and I was so amazed at how well thought out the article was, that I can't remember exactly how it happened, but pretty soon after that, I think I went and signed up for the 21-day, for the smaller 21-day thing. And I don't know when it was, but it would have been the first few days, first week or something. I realized I started to feel two things. I was totally overwhelmed by grief or sadness because I realized that these people had gotten in the head of my girlfriend at the time, and then very really angry, furious. And what I put that down to is it was all there the whole time. I was just so in my head thinking about stuff that I wasn't able to feel it. And once I started doing some of the exercises about getting into the body, all of a sudden it's like the emotions were right there. And that was how it started. Very soon after that, I confronted these coaches and cut them out, which ultimately led to the end of that relationship because my ex-girlfriend now, she was very into them. So then I moved back to Australia and got into SBSM, kept working with that. Somewhere along the way, I started sessions with Seth. I was doing one-on-ones with Seth as well. And a big part, I think one of the biggest things was getting into the aggression work. I mean, all the other stuff people have mentioned was big too, the education and everything, but the aggression. One day I had a session with Seth and it was after I'd just done a San Pedro weekend. So I work a lot with plant medicine. So ayahuasca, San Pedro, mushrooms. And I just come from a weekend. I was like, I think there's this anger that's coming up related to my dad. We went into it, it just exploded. There's this thing that came up through the chest and eventually morphed into growls like I'm a bear or a tiger or something like that. It was insane. And but because I'd been through the course, it was like, okay, I've heard about this, I've practiced it when I'm not triggered. And so then to be in that and to have this charge come out, it's incredible. And then since then it kept coming out. And one thing that's interesting working with these plants as well, a lot of people go and take mushrooms or ayahuasca or something, and it can bring things up very quickly. It seems to open the subconscious, whatever you want to call that, opens up the nervous system. Things come up very fast. And like with this aggression stuff, I mean, even terror, like I've had that as well, without knowing, having the education around the nervous system that, okay, this is a fight or flight response that was from who knows how long ago, or it's a whole bunch of them bundled up together. Without having that, I would be terrified of the feeling and would shut it down without even realizing. And so it's been so good to have the education along with specific techniques or tools, knowing what to do with my awareness, what to do with the body, how to embody different feelings. It's like it gives the energy a way out of the system, because it's like water is trying to flow through a pipe. And I think in the past, or a lot of people, it's like we try and hold it down. And this is like learning to let it out, and riding. You say, Irene says, riding that tsunami wave of sensations, to doing that, and bringing in the plant medicine stuff. It's been really interesting. I've been into SBSM for a few months. I was in Australia at the time, and I drank ayahuasca one day and started using some of the techniques from the course. It was incredible. I was like, this shit is made for each other. Like these plants, I don't know who here does it, but I was into it. But these plants have, whether you believe it's a spirit or it's an intelligence or it's just a drug, these plants teach, like they have certain things that they teach, certain ways of teaching, and it's very similar, if not the same thing, that all the somatic stuff is, and so they go very, very well together. And then to me, I find it can speed things up, of course, if someone's ready for it, because it can bring things up quicker. It softens all the ways we keep things in. It can get rid of those things. So they go very well together. But as far as benefits, it's like I have more energy. I've confronted a whole bunch of different people in my life, much better boundaries. I won't put up with any manipulation. There's zero tolerance for it. Where before, if I started to get angry with someone or annoyed at someone, I would think it's my problem. Like, oh, I'm just projecting. And this was due to stuff that happened when I was a kid with one of my parents, and being gaslit and all that sort of stuff, manipulated. So then I would allow other people to do it as I got older today. But then now it's like, without having to think about it, if I start to get angry, to me, it's like, oh, usually it's like, this person's messing with me somehow. And it's just a feeling. I'll feel it before I think about it. So there's things like that are just, like, it's incredible. It feels like, especially with the aggression stuff, there's a sense of power, but not power over people, but a power of like being solid. And it's like, no one can fuck with me, basically. And that's pretty cool. And then just having energy for getting work done, or just doing whatever it is that I want to do. Like Irene says, it's the same kind of, this like getting up and going and doing stuff is the aggression kind of energy coming through. So it's been a huge part for me. So, and I talk about it with everyone, even with the plant medicine stuff. I came to Peru thinking, I mean, this is where a lot of it started, ayahuasca in the jungles here. And I was thinking, all these people, they'll all get it. They'll all be way ahead of me, kind of a thing. But even here, I can see like there's such a huge need for these tools, even within the psychedelic community. There's a lot of people, I think, going into these ceremonies and they don't really know what they're dealing with, or they're shutting things down, or they're just freaking out because something's coming through too quickly. So yeah.
Thanks, John. Yeah, and just a note, someone asked, oh, is John endorsing drugs? And that's not what he's saying. There's a very large push right now, and it's quite popular. Even Gabor Mate, who many of you know, holds and hosts ayahuasca ceremonies and retreats and other forms of plant medicine. And I believe that there's a time and a place for that. But as John said, many in that world are not aware of the nervous system. And we have to remember, these medicines are natural. They don't know that humans have had all this survival stress and trauma. And so there's a really important element, John, as you've said, to teach people in this world to pace and to be foundational and to be able to be in the body. Because if you can't be in the body, this is where these things can go sideways very quickly. And it's the same for going to a dance class or a yoga class or a craniosacral session. If our body is not ready for what is under that, it can feel too much, and then we shut down even more, or we become more activated in our sympathetic energies. So thank you, John. Holly, you're just above John now on my computer screen. Holly and I actually did an interview a little while ago. And you have a very important history to share, I think, regarding benzodiazepines and getting off of psychiatric meds as a result of PTSD. So I know that you've said to me also, as many of you here have, this changed your life. You might not be here if it wasn't for SmartBody SmartMind. So do you want to give people a little, just, where you are, what you do, because you're also a practitioner, and a bit of this journey?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I'm a massage therapist. I do energy work and some other things involving trauma and somatic. Your work has actually really influenced how I hold space as well. I can't remember who said that before, but it's really, when you start to do your own work too, right? You deepen your own capacity, so you have capacity for the sensations and things of others. So it's definitely informing my work going forward. But yeah, I think I found you in 2017, and I was definitely in crisis. I had been put on a benzodiazepine when I was, I think, 20 years old. And for PTSD, I had a traumatic event and started expressing panic attacks and a lot of major anxiety, but like pretty aggressive panic attacks, and was put on that and was never taken off, really. I did get into the healing world and was exposed to a lot of somatic based healing, but the medication kind of hindered me, right? Because it was numbing what was trying to get out. Eventually that medication made me very sick. And I like to describe it as my nervous system was set on fire. That's literally how I felt. I think when I found you, and I was in the process of coming off. I've been off 4 years now, but I'm so thankful I found your program, because I really needed help. At one point, I can remember even like getting away from my house and being so dysregulated because I didn't have, the comfort of my home. And even, dropping my daughter off at school, these like normal things that people take for granted were very challenging for me. And so I thought, well, I had done a lot of somatic experiencing, and I found you. I think it was Healthy Nervous System Revolution. I was reading all about the vagus nerve and how can I help myself, non-pharmacological, because that journey, the suffering from that was just incredibly intense. So I found your work, and it has been life-changing. I dove in. I didn't even think I worked. I think I took off work and just did that for 3 months, the first round, and I've done a few rounds, since, and can definitely see this being a lifestyle. But I am to the point now. I have a thriving business. I rarely have anxiety either, which is so weird to say after so many years. I was even told by a few professionals I'd probably never get off medication, right? And I'm totally medication free. It has given, it's definitely even deepened that perspective for me that if you give the body what it needs, it's going to take care of you. Our bodies want to regulate themselves. It's just having that map. And for me, I was doing a lot of private work with people and doing a lot of different types of somatic things to try to heal, because I knew somehow intuitively, I knew it was in the body, right? Talk therapy is great and all of that, but I knew the nervous system work is where the gold would be. But your program and how you were able to give the education piece was what I was missing in just doing private work, right? So I could be my own medicine as well in very powerful ways. And then I had, you laid it out so beautifully, the map to do that with. So I've come a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also speak of you to a lot of people, and every time anybody has any, like even just health issues come up, I'm like, oh,
thank you.
Yeah, you're going to be surprised at where it bleeds into. It's also helped me with so many relationship with my daughter, relationships in general, and then the lens I see people through in general now.
Thank you, Holly. And again, another great testimony to all of you saying, not believing necessarily what the diagnoses have been by the doctors, and being like, nope, there's got to be another way. So again, commend you for pushing forward and continuing to seek healing answers. And here you are. And yes, you are anxiety free. I can feel that. So that's very, very wonderful. Katie, you're above Holly on my screen. You are an EFT practitioner and a mother, and I know you rave about this work, and you are up very early or up very late. So let everyone know where you are and why you're here, not sleeping, to share your story with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So my name is Katie Walker. I am in Perth, Western Australia. So it's 2:45 in the morning. And unfortunately for Australians, for us to get involved in any amazing studies or new education or anything that's going to benefit us, we do have to get up at the early hours of the morning, which is fine. So I am an emotional freedom techniques tapping practitioner and trainer. And I had heard, I'm actually a baby alum. So I started in 2021. And I can't imagine now not doing this year on year on year on year. So I have been looking at, I guess, energy work and my own healing journey together with my clients and being the best practitioner. But what SmartBody SmartMind has done has taken that next level for my own journey and my clients. I've been working on my stuff for many, many years, and I didn't have a full appreciation for really that stuck survival physiology. Through tapping, we can make some wonderful inroads, but I didn't realize some of the unprocessed stuff from childhood experiences, operations, accidents, divorces, bad experiences that all happened for whatever reason. And there were times when I couldn't kind of shift through feelings I was feeling, body sensations or emotions, when I'd gone to what I thought was the depth that I could through EFT. And so I was so grateful, because I initially did your 3 free series workshop. And I have to say, Irene, you're so generous with your resources. Like, you really are incredibly generous with what you do give to the world. So I did that, and then I was watching a lot of your work, and I think your language, your education, something just kept resonating, and I thought I needed to know more. And so SBM was SmartBody SmartMind was just that next thing I needed to do. And I guess how it's worked and changed things for me is, someone else said it, the compassion component has been so significant. Not being so hard on myself and judgmental on myself or others, and just being very, very much more softer, I guess, and more compassionate to what is showing up, and being able to handle that with the resources, the orienting, the grounding, which is something that I've been doing with clients, but I guess it's just taking it to that next level. And having an 11-year-old, she's been going through some serious stuff at the moment, and just using your language, because she's now 11. She used to do tapping with me when she was younger, but now being 11, she's like, so I'm like, that's okay. I'm going to try and work with the anger stuff, because anger used to be very fearful for me. Feeling angry didn't feel comfortable, and now I really embrace it. And I'm like, yes, this is great. So similarly with her, I'm like, honey, I just want you to feel your feet. What are you feeling right now? Let's just talk about what's showing up for you. How can we best work with that right now? And just let's work with that for you. I did notice that as I was doing SmartBody SmartMind, I was probably at some points in that functional freeze state. So as I was coming out of that, how I was then responding to my husband and some other family members was probably a little bit more intense. But again, rather than judging it, I just leaned into it, and I had a greater appreciation for it. So I think for me, being able to integrate it personally, professionally, my language with my clients, more education for them, although we do that already, it's just going to that next level. I think a number of my clients have subscribed to you, as with colleagues. I think there are a few that are going to be doing SmartBody SmartMind this time round. So I think it's just been amazing, amazing journey, and I can't see myself stopping here. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. And thanks for sharing a little bit about your parenting with your daughter. And you're right, as you were saying that, because not everyone can see all the other faces, all the alumni are nodding as everyone talks about healthy aggression. In many ways, we could say that the pièce de résistance in SBSM is gaining enough capacity to be able to exert our healthy aggression and anger, which in our society, we either see really bad examples of that are very toxic and violent and abusive, or nothing at all. And we have to remember we're all mammals. We have biologies that need to express this stuff. So important for us in our healing, but really important for the kiddos. So thanks for mentioning that. Raven, you're up next. We did an interview too a little while ago, and we connected because you had not had any luck with some of the brain retraining programs and techniques that are quite popular, and not to say that those don't work for some folks. And for you and many of our students, they haven't worked, which is why they end up in SmartBody SmartMind. So let people know a little bit about you and what you do, and how this work has impacted your being.
Yeah, okay. Well, like she said, my name's Raven. I'm in Texas, and I came to SmartBody SmartMind. March of 2021, trying to keep track here. I would still consider myself very new to it, learning all the time. I came to it because I was chronically ill, shut down, disconnected from life, from everything, and felt very emotionally driven, which was a big point of shame. So then that adds on to further dysregulation. And I had tried a lot of programs, like Irene had. Sorry, I'm dealing with some throat stuff, so if you can hear me, it's great. So I had done several things, extensive chiropractic work, DNRS, different like emotion code, body code, MBSR, all these different things. But like in the interview that I talked with Irene, I really wanted to get to the root of things, knowing that these things could be helpful at some point in time. But I suffered from a lot. At the time, I didn't know early developmental traumas, and I had an ACE score of 10. I'll just throw that in because I've seen you, Irene, kind of bring that up here recently. So if that gives context to maybe my upbringing in a nutshell. I was just really desperate for life, desperate for just something different. And then I came across your work and the 3-part series on healing trauma. It unlocks something. You want all these systems to unlock something in that brain, create that new pathway, but just merely recognizing this big part that I think everyone around me kind of hinted at and maybe knew on some small level, but to the extent that I needed, I saw through time and space and was just like, God, this is everything I've ever wanted and ever needed. And it's really been helping to reshape my life and my world, my relationships. I mean, I could go into it. Everyone has done such a beautiful job of already kind of stating that. And I would have to say right now I'm in the raw of it. So built that foundation and moving through healthy aggression and having just interesting like movements and things that you didn't even know were attached coming through. And you started talking about healthy aggression, Irene, and my arm went like this. And I was like, I'm still in the middle of it. So just to be raw and candid with where I'm at in my journey, and but also getting to experience a lot of life, hiking and traveling and just all these things, and not doing them for a sense of trying to escape, but merely because I can fully embrace them now. And which is a totally different thing once you start realizing that and connect back. So I think that's a short little tidbit. And I no longer identify as chronically ill. I'm still working through some stuff, but it's as if I can't even talk about that anymore. I have no desire, no verbiage for it. You truly just want life.
Thank you. Thank you. And what you had mentioned, for those new here who are really new to the lingo, you had mentioned that you have an ACE score of 10.
Yeah.
Which you know, we don't need to go into, other than to say this is very prominent research that has shown when there's been a lot of early stress and adversity, and if you have a score of 10, then there was neglect, abuse, family members were not well. That on a little person is a lot of stress and a lot of trauma. And we now know that when one does not heal from that, we will most likely end up with some form of chronic illness, mental illness, addictions, etc. And you are living proof, my dear, that that is not a life sentence. It can be changed, it can be healed. And the fact that you started in 2021 is a testament to your work being consistent, and of course you going through the program. So super grateful that you have found us and are here and all that stuff. There's some questions here, so I'm going to go over to the questions. And this is a general question, and Donnie answered, but I'm going to just read it. Did people ever feel lost or left behind in the program because their pace was a little bit slower than, say, the call schedule? So part of, so if one of our alum want to answer that, let me know by waving or something like that. But yeah, there are, Jen will, okay, you're up, Jen, in a second. Yeah, there are live calls in the SBSM program. I do training calls on Tuesdays. My husband does Q&A calls on Thursdays. And those are part of the live portion of the program. But the curriculum, the content, it is there for you to move into and out of as you need. So Jen, what would you say to this, this question here?
So I would say that part of my default wiring before the program was I have to be the good student. So when I started this program, I was going to show up on time. I was going to be the first person in class. And that was really overwhelming for my nervous system because it was in crisis. And you were always so clear about, you have to follow your impulses. You have to take the time it takes. And that was such a big shift that the farther and farther and farther I fell behind, the more I felt like I was doing the work. Like, this feels awkward, this feels wrong, but I'm following what my body needs. And that's the hard part of the work. I'm listening to myself and giving myself time to integrate. And I think it was a full year before I finished the whole program for the first time. And I actually found that watching the calls later was more appropriate to the needs of what my nervous system was then, because seeing too many faces live all at once at that stage in my healing was really overwhelming and not helpful. So having the lifetime access really took the pressure off, and also having the ability to go back and watch the calls and maybe watch 10 minutes and then put it down and come back later. It really added to the way my healing progressed.
Thank you. And Donnie, thanks for also answering in the chat. Just to echo, he also said, follow the impulse, be guided, and you might stop a bit, you might go a little bit more. Of course, we want you to continue to immerse and have this work in your field, but sometimes you do need to take a break when you've been living with stress and, say, maybe a chronic illness or an autoimmune condition like Selden. Like, your body needs time to recover and repair. And again, this is why, yes, we have this formatted in a 12-week live session, but man, we have people come back and pace and use the training calls, not necessarily as something where you have to sit there for the 90 minutes, but as Jen said, just do 10 minutes or do 5 minutes. And this is really, I joke about this, but this is the beauty of how you can just say, I don't want to listen to Irene anymore. I'm just going to shut my computer down and she'll be there next week or tomorrow, versus in an actual semester of school, which so many of us grew up with. You have to get your homework done. You have to push, you have to cram to pass the test. Because we've been trained that way for so many of us, it is a bit of a 180-degree shift in this work to learn a different way. This is a question about craniosacral, and I know we have some folks here who are body workers and energy workers. How can you speak to how this program is the same or different than craniosacral work? So for me, craniosacral work, which is working with the cranium, the sacrum, maybe the fluids of the body, depending on the type of work, is really a methodology that's trying to work on something specific, right? It might be something misaligned in the skull and the pelvis. Whereas SmartBody SmartMind is really learning a language. It's learning the language of regulation of your nervous system. They complement each other beautifully. So is there anyone, Holly, I'd love to hear your, because I know this is some work that you do. So let people know the differences from your perspective.
Yeah, so I do cranial sacral and have received a ton of it over the last 20 years. And cranial is extremely settling work, right? And you could also maybe have some experiences where you tap into past trauma or something could come up during processing, but very different, definitely go beautifully together. Not a bad thing to have a cranial sacral therapist if you're healing trauma or any chronic illness, really, but very, very different. This is, you're tuning into, and you also have to rely on the other person to access that settling stage, right? I mean, they're working with you, but with SmartBody SmartMind, you're able to go in and access your own, and it's a little more profound and different. Both beautiful work, but very, very different. So
thank you. Donnie, you had one more piece you wanted to add. Come on in.
So this was more for the previous question. But what I found in this program is that it really challenged my way of learning. And so when Irene would say pause, I would pause, but then I realized all the other areas in my life where I wasn't pausing. So if I was working on something, I would continue to push through. Or if I was having a difficult conversation with my ex or with a colleague or whomever, I would continue to push through. And so I've watched that shift over the past year, and I've integrated that approach when I'm working with my entrepreneurs as they're building their business. It's like, look, this isn't working for you. So you need to take some time for yourself, step away, and then come back. And so I think for people who are thinking about this program, that is going to be one of the key pieces as you are moving through it, because at some point you are likely to find yourself pausing, and let that know, just know that that is going to be okay. But I think it's the process of honoring yourself in that moment where you reteach yourself, oh, wow, I can listen to myself. I got myself. And then you continue. It's going to show up in so many profound ways in different aspects of your life.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add to Donnie's, even if there's something that's coming up? Yeah, Darla, please.
So just like what he was saying, for me, I was telling you this year, I feel like I'm finally starting to heal. The important part is the integration, because there was one year, and I don't remember which year it was, I did one exercise through the whole thing, and that was the only one I did. And almost for an entire year, just the kidney adrenal exercise. I did that over and over and over because I knew, what he's saying, what everybody's saying is true. Learning how to listen to yourself, which was something I never was taught, and most of us aren't, and that, so the pacing, you've always brought that up over and over and over. And I think that's why now my body is saying, okay, I'm ready. Let's do it.
So good. Yes. And what Darla is mentioning, a big part of SmartBody SmartMind, say compared to the 21-day nervous system tune-up, because I see there might be a question here about that. SmartBody SmartMind brings in as much as I can in a 12-week period from my trainings and learnings, working with early trauma, developmental trauma, obviously shock trauma and movement, and working with these stress organs like the kidney adrenals, the brainstem, the gut, the layers was mentioned a little while ago. These are exactly what I would do if I had someone in my private practice. We might just work with kidney adrenals for an entire year, actually. And what became very clear in my private practice was, I think someone can learn how to do this by themselves. I'm learning how to do this and tune into it in my body as I work with someone. So why can't we teach people how to do this, right? And so it really does give you this ability to work with your body in ways that we haven't really seen be taught in other spaces. I'm going to get back to the questions here. So this is a more general question. So thank you to everyone here. Having had 30 years of chronic illness and have done everything, and they say this in quotes, I could try. Did anyone experience healing around digestive issues and being able to tolerate supplements? I've already got some hands up, so hang on. I react to every supplement. Even transcendental meditation or regular qigong can overwhelm my nervous system and go into shutdown. So it feels like what I do to help, often my body, it struggles. Love to hear if anyone's had a similar journey. And they've said they've already signed up for the course, so they want to know. I think I saw a few hands. Remind me again your hands. Selden, let's go to you here for this one.
Yeah, so with chronic illness, first of all, my body was reactive to everything. I mean, literally, foods, I was hyperreactive to foods. I was reactive to supplements. I mean, most of the time, most of my day was revolved around what am I reacting to? And my reactions were like, there was a plethora of symptoms that I would experience, from skin rashes to heart palpitations, severe insomnia, depression. I mean, so many things. Digestion, sorry, that's what you mentioned. My digestion was a mess. This might be a little TMI for everyone. I'm just going to go there. I did not have regular digestion. I'll say I had basically diarrhea and undigested food, stuff.
Yeah. It's okay.
Oh, embarrassed. A lot of people on this call. For like as long as I can remember. I think it went back to when I was a teenager. I would say around the 6-month mark of doing SBSM, I was like, oh my gosh, I have normal poops. Yeah. I mean, they're totally normal. I didn't even know that was going to happen. And what's interesting is I was aware of adrenal health, and I was doing a lot to heal my adrenals already. I was like eating, I had given up all stimulants at this time. I was eating every hour to 2 hours. I was not doing intense workouts. I was like doing a lot already to try to calm my system down, but it did not heal my digestive system until I did SBSM. So, yeah. And then I do want to take a moment and just respond quickly to the last comment when Donnie was saying, as a practitioner, because I do help people with autoimmune and chronic illness. I help with slow, gentle detoxification and energy healing. And I work at the quantum field. And the way in which I work and assist my clients is vastly different, because most of the time I'm teaching them how to follow the impulse and how to feel into the body on how to move next, because we are our own best healers. And until we can learn to follow our body impulses and listen to what's happening in the system, then that is our own medicine, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of what I teach now is following that impulse as well. As a practitioner, I just wanted to mention that.
Thanks, Selden.
Thank you.
Yeah, and not everybody saw, but my sense is everyone's digestion hopefully is shifted. Yeah. And the reason why that's actually so important, it seems funny, but it isn't. The autonomic nervous system governs our ability to process food, to digest food, to absorb nutrition, and create solid stool, and also urination. And when we are co-opted into constant survival and stress, the system can't do that basic housekeeping. And then that's where we end up getting deficient in these things, even though we're taking tons of supplements. Does anybody else have any follow-up about how maybe some of their core systems shifted? Holly, do you want to mention? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I mentioned, outside of the benzos, I also was diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease during all of this crisis too. And I, like Jen, had hypersensitivity to everything. I mean, I couldn't even eat chocolate sometimes without, maybe even panic, but like my gut would shut down. And when I found you, I had actually lost 20 pounds rapidly. And I was not even, I don't even think I was absorbing food. I was able to tolerate like homemade bone broth and a little bit of chicken here and there. And things have completely rewired for me. My gut is moving a lot better. I don't have as many sensitivities, and I am not afraid to try new supplements or herbs or things anymore. So that was a pretty huge shift to me. I'm at a very healthy weight too. I would have to literally like work on my kidneys and adrenals before I even ate food. I can remember doing like legs up the wall before I found you. I was also working with I had adrenal fatigue as well to even be able to eat. The nervous system, I'm going to eat to be able to eat. That's how, stuck in dysregulation I was. So
Thank you. Thanks, Holly. Janet, there's a question here, and Donnie did respond in the chat, so thanks, Donnie, but it's about anger and healthy aggression. And I know, you've given me permission to mention a bit of your past, and we've talked a lot, and I know that there was a moment in the training or in SmartBody SmartMind when you were working with some of the body parts and an old trauma came up, and anger and protection. Do you want to just share a little bit? The question is, you've talked about healthy aggression. How do you work with stored, unprocessed anger? I have anger stuck in my leg and forehead. They say, I know that sounds weird, but it's not weird. And I've struggled to express it with somatic experiencing. So one note I'll say, and then Janet, you're up, is remember that the somatic experiencing was really developed for shock trauma as a whole. While Peter, the founder, is like a master shaman and he can work with all sorts of traumas, the base level curriculum of SE doesn't really get into working with early trauma, and it also doesn't really get into working with healthy aggression. These are elements that I've learned through more masterclass levels and other training. But Janet, do you want to share yours a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was doing that quadrant exercise, and I was working right here, and just like, kind of with Irene's exercises, and you're like, yeah, okay, I'm kind of bored, And out of nowhere, I had this massive, like, get the fuck off of me, like, move through me. And I was like, whoa, right? And I had been raped when I was 16, and what it was that had stored there. And that was profound in and of itself. It just moved, right? But the other thing that was profound was then later in the group, I mentioned it, and Seth shared with me, that my body, and just the way he said it, my body had shut down in that moment into a freeze response because that was what was biologically necessary. Now, I had spent, I don't know, 25 years, 30 years blaming myself for this event, right? Even though I knew consciously it was not my fault, I had blamed myself. I had toxic shame around this experience. And so Seth saying that my body did what was biologically necessary for survival, like took me off of the hook. It allowed me to grieve as well as express that anger that needed to move through me. And it was incredibly profound. I'm getting a little teary right now. And after that experience, I had worked with some anger before, but this was something I did not even know it was there. And because it was spontaneous, it really moved quite naturally through me. And what happened from there too, I just want to add a little thing, is that, as I got more and more accustomed to doing on everything everyone said about taking your time and, following the impulse and everything, is that there's all these other layers of trauma I didn't know about that were repressed, right? And doing this work and allowing myself to feel those things that were in me at this pace that felt safe for my container, where my body was like, we're good with Janet. She's listening. Like I'm good. She can do this work. it gave me space for that repressed trauma to come to the surface, because I was able to work with the anger, I was able to work with the grief, I was able to feel the fullness of the emotions and stay regulated through it. And that has been a big part of the gift of this program, and how it's like really woven into the fabric here, is that once you start doing it, once you allow it to move through your body, you're like, I can do this. It's okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Janet. And Darla, I'll go to you in a second. And at the very beginning, you said, you're sitting here doing this exercise, you're kind of bored. And I appreciate that honesty. Everyone's again laughing because we're not doing acrobatic movements when we're doing these exercises. They're very subtle. They are tapping into your intention and your ability to listen. And that's the purpose, because we're not trying to pry something out. We're trying to have you, we're wanting you to reconnect in a way with your body that maybe has never been connected to before. And I know we're wired to have that level of intuition and wanting to have that release. And this is just a vehicle to bring you in. And so sometimes at the beginning, it could be like, I don't feel like anything's happening. And Darla, what would you like to share here?
This is almost exactly what you said, because sometimes I tell my husband this all the time, even a 4-year-old can do these exercises. They are so simple. And when you first start doing them, you think, how can this possibly do anything? And like she was saying, sometimes you have a really huge response, and other times there's just really nothing at all. I mean, you don't really feel anything right then. You may later, sometimes you may remember something, sometimes you don't. Sometimes I don't want to say it's boring, but sometimes it puts me to sleep. And, I just get so calm and so relaxed. But getting the anger part out, that was the part that triggered me at first, was that when you start doing that, the compassion comes after that, because a lot of our anger is toward ourselves. And that has been huge. That's one thing I didn't mention earlier, is that compassion for yourself. Like when she felt like it wasn't my fault, that changes everything in your perspective.
Thank you. Anybody else have an urge? Yeah, Donnie, to share and follow up.
Yeah, so one thing that I didn't share in my intro is when Irene and I met, I was doing cancer coaching work. So I was working with cancer patients and their families. And most of my patients would all come to me because they were dealing with anger issues. So as you can imagine, you just got this diagnosis and your world is turned upside down. And I wasn't ready to deal with it. And so if I think about my own journey, I'm originally from Mobile, Alabama. I'm also same gender loving. So being gay in the South and navigating that world, and also being in religious context, there was a lot of built up anger. And so now fast forward that into adulthood, that's just been bubbling underneath the surface. And so where I really noticed the difference in the work was as I've been going through the divorce with my ex. It only happened 6 months ago. And at first I was like, oh, I shouldn't be angry. I should try and be friends. And then there was a period of like, no, forget it. Like, you need to get this out. And so what I found is that I would take some time to go through the exercises of wringing a towel or growling with my face or making a sound. And now those are just in my everyday. So something might piss me off in the moment and I can do like right? And then it just releases and I can go on about my day. And so there's not this pent up teapot that's happening. And I shared those simple things with a lot of my clients because most of them come from, oh, you should be a good girl, you should be a kind boy. Everybody wants you to be respectful. And that just doesn't work. And in the process of doing that too, I found that my boundaries are a lot clearer. My communication is a lot clearer because now I can just tell people, oh, that actually doesn't work for me, or that doesn't feel good to me. Or can we figure out an arrangement that works for the two of us? Yeah. And that in itself has been one of the biggest gifts in these past weeks.
Thank you, Donnie. Does anybody else, John, want to follow up on this thing of I'm going to unmute you? Yeah, about boundaries, and then Raven. This is a big one. And John, just hang on a second, because I want people to understand where this is rooted. And this isn't going to be for everyone, but for most of us, how we were raised as little people dictates how comfortable we are saying no or asking for help. If someone wasn't there to foster that in a good, secure, attached, loving, connected way, a little person, it's not that they're scared. They just don't know it's an option to say, I don't like that, or please, can you help me? So these are these subtleties that we start to notice that, as many people have said here, ripple out. And then we realize, wow, I'm like asserting myself, but I'm not being violent. This is really different. So John?
Yeah, I mean, how I understood it was, one of my parents was very manipulative. So like if I had a problem with something they did as a kid, there'd be like a gaslight or it's not such a big deal, don't be so uptight. Like these little, they're not so little I see now, but at the time it's, oh, it's not that big a deal. Yeah, you're just being uptight, you're just being fussy, you're just being grumpy. There's like it's like the parent didn't want to take responsibility for their own mistakes. And so over time, I think what that did to me is then I have a problem with something, but I feel like it's my problem. It's not their problem. It's not, I have an issue, sort of like what Gabor Mate, there's a quote in SBSM that you put in there about, it's something about you learn that, well, the problem's me. I have to hold this in because it's not safe to let this out. And then instead of thinking that what I'm feeling is real and valid and authentic and good, I said, something's wrong with me for having this feeling. And then I think someone mentioned like the anger, like is at ourselves. I remember reading something about like anger, when it's held in, it either goes out to other people who it's not even for, or it goes in at the self or at myself. So, but how it came out the first time as it relates to that leg thing, I was working with Seth. He's like, do a few karate sounds into this. It said there, it felt like there was a belt wrapped around my solar plexus. And so he made some karate sounds like that, to, I guess, stir it up a bit. And then for the next 40 minutes, 50 minutes, it was just tracking it, just basically staying like laser focused on that spot. And it gradually worked its way up into the chest. And then the breath would start, because the breath starts speeding up as it starts going into sympathetic. And then as it gets into the throat, it starts to become like and it gets more and more intense until it's in the face. And the whole face is like vibrating. There's like all these tingles all around. And I guess having Seth there, it's like, oh, now it's like the face wants to snarl, it wants to growl, it wants to, do it, like the eyes want to squint. And then after that, it wasn't like I was perfectly peaceful after that. Then I could actually feel the anger that I guess that was, that was frozen, I guess. So then after that, I was very, very angry with the parent who was manipulative, and had to have a very big conversation with him, or a few conversations. So, but I remember meditating like a few days after that, just sitting down and just sitting there. I was like, what? I think I'm anxious. Like, I'm like, really, what's going on? Like, I feel really nervous or something. And something clicked. That's not anxiety. That's anger. And that you're going to keep feeling that until you express that to the person that it needs to be expressed to.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Anxiety in our lingo is survival stress. It's fight, flight, right? It's that energy of protection. Anybody else want to share a little bit about their experiences, either general that you realize you forgot to mention at the beginning? Raven, let's bring you in.
Oh yeah, because we were still on that topic. Even now, like I'm like snarling a little and it's coming out. You can see like my face is really flushed, and that's that that coming out in real time. So I had to pause it at one point and just go and be with it for a second. But you can tell that there's regulation too, because I'm not fully given into this erratic state, but you can sense and tell. But anyway, I had a mentor one time and I didn't take the advice at the time, but now it really clicks. It's like all of these things and injustices or boundaries that were crossed, all this different stuff that starts to come up. I didn't want to tap into that rage, and it's been very detrimental because I was that person that turned it all inward. It's all just me, like, just taking on the brute of everything. It didn't matter if I completely knew it was someone else's doing or not. It was just a way to cope with it, because you have, like you want to make sense of, what happened. But something really powerful that I lean on is that rage is the only force powerful enough to reestablish boundaries. And so that's been really helpful in using that as a tool and then knowing, like I've heard a few people saying as they work through that and like the healthy aggression, that's where those clear boundaries start coming back in. And so
Great.
see it as more than just I don't know. It always had a negative connotation, but then when you start to see it as that resource for reestablishing like your world, it becomes really powerful.
Thank you. And I like that you mentioned that you had to turn off your camera and process a little bit in the moment. And that's great. And I'm really glad you shared that, because this is the work, guys and gals, right? It isn't one and done. There is this thought, I think, that's been portrayed that you heal your trauma and then you're done and then that's it and life goes on. This is not like that, because we're constantly around environmental stimuli, things are happening. And I still myself personally am amazed at how much stuff the body can hold. And it can hold a lot, trust me. And as we start to move these things out, we become more, as people have been saying, compassionate, connected, and understanding that this is just how we are and it's okay. And these are normal things that are happening. Selden, you wanted to chime in there.
Yeah. As I was moving through the program, I started to notice, I talked a little bit before about how I shamed myself for my symptoms, and everything was kind of pointed my finger back at me, and what's wrong with me and why, all the stories. So my dad, my sweet dad, who, God love him, doesn't know much about any of this stuff. And he was speaking to me in a way. I'm a 45-year-old woman, fully capable of, living my life and doing all the things. And he was speaking to me in a way that I think he has this on my whole life. But I noticed it in a different way. What it sounded like was very similar, or maybe identical to how I was speaking to myself, right? That shame that is not the healthy shame that Irene talks about. And in a moment, my whole life, I've never been able to do this. And in a moment, I felt that this just enough sympathetic rush to come up. And I said to him, you can't speak to me that way. I laid a boundary. I was firm, but I wasn't a bitch. And previously, what my pattern would be to freeze and not say anything until I exploded. And then I was a complete bitch. And then they don't hear anything. Then nothing gets resolved.
Exactly.
And so that was my pattern with all of my relationships. And then this moment happened and it was pivotal. And my dad hasn't spoken to me that way since, and all it took was like 2 firm sentences. And
Yes.
It was amazing, and that is because of this work.
Yeah.
Because I was grounded. I was able to be in a healthy state of sympathetic to state what I needed.
Beautiful. And that's a wonderful example of being comfortable with healthy shame that can also happen with our parents and adults. It isn't just with teaching children right from wrong, but it's wired in us. When someone addresses us in that healthy way of that's not okay, we are like, okay, that's not okay. I get it. It's like we're wired to hear that. Katie, you wanted to say something.
It was more about the anger work and being able to, I think for me, there was that fear of feeling that anger, and that was from I guess how I was told to process it as a child. That's not okay. So what I'm really appreciating about working with this is now with my child. So if there's mamas and papas in considering this, for your own work, obviously, but being able to do things very differently for your children, it's just so significant. So my daughter used to, and there's still moments that I'm seeing, but it's less and less, which is so incredible to me. Her anger comes out in either physical with me or hitting walls and doors. And so now being able to just say to her, you need to be feeling this stuff, honey. I don't want you to not feel this stuff. I want you to know what's going on for you in the language that's appropriate for her. And then just giving her options. So whether it be the towel, or whether it be a pillow, or whether it be kind of making noises, or whatever thing I can think of in that moment. So she's really appreciating it. I'm not trying to say to her, don't feel that feeling. You go away, go into your room, do what you need to do, blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying, let's embrace this. And so I just think I want so very much for her experience to be very different. And I'm using your language with her. I think the thing that I love about you, Irene, and how you talk about this is the education is so critical. And so she's not too young to understand that things are happening for her in her little system. So let's give that language so she can then be okay with it.
Beautiful.
To normalize it. Yeah.
Yeah, kids get it. Of course, we might change the language and to where they're understanding, but they're intuitively, they're there, right? And they know it when you connect with that. Darla, you wanted to say something.
That's one thing I love about SmartBody SmartMind. What I had said before in the beginning, for me, the support was so fabulous because we're also like-minded. And listening to other people's stories, you can always resonate for people who haven't done it yet and wanting to know how this can help them. That's huge. That is a huge, huge piece, because most of us that have these issues have been told there's something wrong with us in one way or another. Maybe not verbally, maybe just, through actions or whatever, but in reality, no. And when you are surrounded by other people like we are in this group, where we're all sharing our stories and we're all supporting each other in that and saying and validating, the validation, I guess that's the word I'm looking for. The validation and affirmation that you receive through this is life-changing, because then it's like she was talking about how she treats her daughter. It's not just about what happens for you. It's about how you treat other people, and then they in return treat you differently, and then start treating everyone else differently. It's a ripple.
Thank you. There's a question that came into the chat. It's a little different. I'm going to tackle it. Someone asked, is there anybody who hasn't been helped when they go through this program? And it's very possible that there are. And I say that because it depends on a person. Are they engaging with the work? Are they still in a toxic and abusive environment, which will hinder our ability to learn and pace ourselves? So there's definitely a possibility. One of the things I've witnessed, I think, that makes it tougher, but I also know that many of you here have been in this, is people that are in deep, deep functional freeze, and it's hard to connect with the body. That's where there needs to be a trust that if I just keep doing this and keep doing this, something will change. And that requires a lot of hope. That requires a lot of patience and commitment. The other, I would say, representation where the program might be difficult is if someone has, but then again, I'm going to say this because I know some of you have had a lot of early and developmental trauma, so this is not necessarily true. But for some, if there's a need to have a secure person with them, then this self-study way of interacting with yourself and, a website, because that's where you go in to learn, it might not work for you. And so that's, again, each person is a little different. And I have seen, if you are all here, for those watching and listening, and if you can be here and nod with us and laugh a little when we make a joke, then chances are you can move through this. But again, it's about commitment and patience and sticking with it. Someone asked, what does functional freeze look like? Industrialized society. It's our Western world. It's the way that we can push and push. And wow, that person can work so much. They look at all the things that they've done. Look how clean their house is. Look at all the relationships. Look at all the committees they're on. How are they doing it? There's a lot of functional freeze in our society as a result of just industrialized living, Western living. And then, of course, it might show up in not being able to feel, I don't cry, or I never get angry. What? no, that's, I'm all calm. I'm very calm. So I wanted to answer that. And I'm going to wrap up because I know that we're already at 90 minutes and I want to respect all of my alums' time here. And I might stick around and do a few more questions, but for all of you here, I know Janet had to run. Those that are still here, anybody, like, is there something burning and like, I got to say this before we close off the alumni portion of our call. And if everyone is feeling good about what they've said, that's cool too. Darla, yes, please.
Just one little thing. I just want to say I love everybody on here. I mean, I just do. It is so empowering because it's just so empowering. I just can't say enough good.
Thank you. Thank you. Jen, yes, please.
I want to put it out there to anybody who's maybe intimidated by the social aspect of this program and say that you can do this completely alone. When I started, I was afraid of everyone and most especially myself. So the having to interact or at that time leave comments on Facebook, now it's moved on to the private server. That was really deeply triggering. It was helpful for prompting me to do more work, but it was also like, it was just I could not do that part of the program, and yet it didn't hinder my ability to make progress and heal. And this is lifelong stuff, but I also saw benefit after the first lab. Like orienting changed my life immediately. That was one 15-minute exercise and I use it all the time. But I want anybody out there who feels like they're isolated and they need to stay that way for the beginning of healing, that's okay too. You can do this on your own and it will work if you give it time and give yourself the grace to go through the awkwardness of learning a new skill.
Thank you, Jen. Anyone else? All right. I'm going to answer a couple questions that came in here. Again, all of you, thank you so much. All of my alum, all of, it's so great too for some of you to meet each other and see faces. And, you're right, Jen, I didn't know most of you at all until I got a message or a DM and you share your story years later. And I like that because I don't want to be the guru that you have to be with every single week. That was, for everyone here, that was one of the reasons that I didn't love private practice for that. I felt like I needed to be there for the clients. And while it was great work and I loved the people I worked with, I wanted you guys and them to like take this on and do it. And the curriculum has been shifted and changed, and we've added things to it, and it really is robust and solid right now. So again, thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to dive into some questions for a little bit. So again, you're free to stay or leave if you have to get to other things. Thank you so much. Katie, go to sleep.
Thank you, Irene.
Yeah.
I do just want to say thank you, Irene, honestly, and your team is absolutely incredible.
They are.
So including your husband and the work he's done, and Ilya and the other, just amazing. So thank you so very much. I'm going to go to bed.
Yes, go to bed.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
There's a question here that ties beautifully in. Someone asked, how does SBSM work with early and pre-verbal developmental trauma, medical quarantine at 1 year old for up to several weeks, and near-death trauma and waterborne enteric disease? So there's a lot there. Here's how it works. I mentioned a second ago working with the stress organs, the kidney, adrenals, the gut, the brainstem, the layers of the body, the diaphragms. This is what we really need to work with when there's been early trauma, because when it's pre-verbal, we don't make sense with thoughts. Our emotional body isn't even on yet. So there might be this inability to even understand what's happening because it's completely based in survival physiology. Right. So when you're that little and you are in a quarantine, you're disconnected, you're not being connected with mama, that's terrifying for a little new system. And so the system is going to flip back and forth between high, what we would call sympathetic fight flight, but more than likely, eventually the system's going to crash and go into shutdown. And with that, we need to really honor what happened, but then slowly bring in reconnection to these organs. And as Jen had said, this slow showing up, showing up, showing up, showing up. You're here. It's not even about saying to your system, you're safe. We don't ever say that. It's about just showing up. And oddly, the unconscious, the cells, after time, they start to go, wow, okay, she's showing up or he's showing up. This must be a sign that it's okay to start to feel again and process these things. It is very difficult to find that level of work without the branches that myself and many of our colleagues who support the program do. This is specifically the work of Kathy Kane and Stephen Terrell. The book that they wrote is Nurturing Resilience, and she is also a somatic experiencing practitioner, but that is in the program. That work is not within the 21-day nervous system tune-up. Mainly because the 21-day nervous system tune-up is really a base level starter course. It's wonderful, but we just don't have time to build the foundation to get to these stress organ levels. Next question. Did anyone discover themselves through the program? My sense is yes. I've been in a state of freeze pretty much my entire life, and I saw that there's some replies here from Jen and Donnie, so thank you. But I'll read it just for those who are watching and can't see the chat. So autoimmune complex PTSD, after a recent breakdown, apart from the anxiety and depression, the realization hit me that I no longer know who I am, and I felt so lost, along with trying to work through the breakdown. So yes, one of the things that people will say as they start to work with this is there can be a little bit of a disorientation and literally maybe not recognizing yourself when you look in the mirror. And this is part of, we could say, the chrysalis, you know, the butterfly coming out of the cocoon, the onions layers being peeled off. And what's essential when we are rediscovering ourselves and maybe even feeling our body for the first time, it can bring up some pretty deep visceral reactions of disgust, of, oh, this is what my bones feel like. And it can be a little shocking when we've been so shut down. But again, that piece we mentioned at the beginning about pacing, taking your time, feeling, we call it growing our capacity, growing our swimming pool, right? We want to build this capacity so that the feelings that we're having with these new discoveries, they might activate us, but they're not going to shock us into another state of shutdown or into a state of more hyperarousal. So that is my answer to that question. Next question, does the program also work with chronic stress, burnout, anxiety that isn't necessarily from trauma per se? 100%. I'm going to challenge that question a little bit because we burn ourselves out and we have anxiety usually because of unhealed survival stress, and that's code for unhealed trauma. Now, it's possible that someone hasn't had any ACEs. So and this isn't a gloating thing, it's just my reality. I don't have any ACE scores, but I had so much trauma in regards to exposure to chemicals, shock traumas through accidents, through sport, and through the classic conditioning of our school system. I was a kid that was very, very, very unable to compute basic things. They thought I was learning disabled as a kiddo. And thank goodness, rather than being put through the battery of tests, my parents just loved me. They didn't make a big deal about it. And we just kept living. And I figured it out and I figured it out. And yeah, I still sometimes can't count and add and these sorts of things. But a lot of the stress, the anxiety, the burnout, when we really look at it, it's a result of us not knowing how to sense our bodies and connect with the world. And it's things piling into our system over time. So 100%, if someone is working and knows that they're burnt out, they know they're chronically stressed, there is definitely room for you in this work to learn how to listen to your body so that you don't keep piling in that chronic stress over and over and over again. All right. Someone said, I enrolled and my resistance has flared. LOL. And Donnie's response, welcome to the club. Yeah, there will be resistance that comes up when we start to do this work, and that's healthy. There's a part of us that knows that we're about to make a huge shift and it's going to be foreign. And I say in one of our pre-game videos, expect there to be resistance, expect there to be procrastination, expect there to be this moment of, this is stupid, I don't want to do this anymore, right? That's some of our early things coming up where maybe we were never allowed to say to our parents, I don't like that. So there can be this interesting resurgence of our inability when we were young to really assert our boundaries and say no when we start to get into this field, because it is quite accepting and safe and contained. All right, next question here. Someone said, it's a comment here, but someone mentioned it's trickier when you're older, like Irene and Seth have said. The theory had to filter through 70 years of freeze. Every time I review a lab, watch a video, or revisit a Q&A, I pick up new nuggets, it's like something I'm seeing for the first time. Yes. And so I'm going to bet that some of our young folks will also say that, yep, as I do something over again, I see something new for the first time. I see Jen nodding with that. But yeah, sometimes when we're a little on the older side, we have a few more onion layers to peel off. We have a few more armored shells around us. But again, our system wants to heal. It wants that regulation. All right, question. I've been working with a somatic coach, one-on-one sessions recently, and she said I might find value in seeing a therapist for trauma caught in my body. I almost died in 2020 from a brain bleed, and the more I learn, the more I see that I've had trauma throughout my entire life. I'll be frank, I don't fully trust traditional therapy. I just don't know how to evaluate your program in the context of what I'm already doing with my coach versus therapy. I know and understand that you can't say that this is a replacement for therapy, but I don't know how to see the program in the context of what I'm already doing in therapy. It's a great question. And what I'll say is that you're right. This will not be a replacement for classic talk therapy, and it might not be a replacement for coaching, but what it is offering is a new language. And so I stopped my private practice because it was so clear I wanted my clients, my students to have everything in my brain and all of the practices that I knew how to do for myself or to teach so that they could become their own, as I say, medicine, so they could work with their body and shift it and have intention and attention to it in a different way. So what I can say, and of course, if there's our alum here who want to chime in, who have done therapy and who have done coaching, it is different. It's not a replacement, but man, it is going to build a foundation so that when you do therapy or you do coaching, there's just much more clarity. It's more crystallized what you need to do, what you need to ask for. And it is teaching you that language of your nervous system. All right. But yeah, Donnie, do you want to chime in since you are a coach and all that? I know you've done work personally.
Yeah, so I was working with a therapist as I was going through the program, and the two married with one another really well. One, because I was searching for therapists who were specifically somatically trained, or at least had some idea what somatic work was. But the second piece was I would go and have a session with my therapist. We would talk about something, and then I could go back to Irene's work and say, great, now how am I experiencing this in the body? Is it anger? Is it fear? Is it frustration? And then what tool do I need, or what tool can I use to help me come back to myself?
Thank you, Donnie. Yeah, and Darla, please.
I love the way that he said that. I had a lot of trauma in my younger years. I've probably done 20 years of talk therapy type, cognitive behavior changes, all that stuff. There was a missing piece to that. And if I can just be blunt, SmartBody SmartMind addresses heart, mind, body, and soul. The soul piece does not exist in talk therapy, and the body piece does not exist in talk therapy, but it does exist in SmartBody SmartMind. So by the time I got to this and had that other stuff behind me, it was like, this is what I've been missing. This has healed things that happened. I had birth trauma. It's healed that. It's healed early childhood trauma. It's a different level, and I don't really know how to put it into words since I've done both. And I was very high functional freeze, even with doing talk therapy, because like someone else had mentioned earlier, I'm a good student. I was an A student. I do things the way they say to do it. I know how to follow directions, all of that kind of stuff. But SmartBody SmartMind is a different way of thinking. And it forced me to stop trying to earn approval. If I may be blunt, I don't need Irene's approval, because to her, all she says is take it at your own pace. You can do this. You can figure it out. Be your own medicine. And it's forced me to learn how to listen to my own body. And that's not something that talk therapy can give you. And I'm not saying talk therapy is bad, because I learned a lot from that as well. But this is a completely different style. And yes, I learned to find who I am through this, which I couldn't do any other way.
Thank you, Darla. Yeah, and what really is landing for me and is a reminder to everyone that what we're working with here is what we had hoped had happened in our first, say, 5-10 years of life. And again, it's not about putting blame on our parents or society or the medical system, but it's like our systems have not figured out how to nurture humanity in the way that humans need nurturing, so that we can explore our higher creative brains, which are very creative and have tons of potential. And so there is a very different element to this that can sometimes be hard to articulate, because it's hard for a newborn baby to articulate, I feel secure and safe to be who I am. They just feel it. They just feel it. And that's where this is a little different. And it might seem a little too good to be true. And it also might seem a little vague. There was a comment here from someone that says, I'm doubting to go into SBSM, and that's completely fine. Although I believe in this work. So there's something that your system is saying, there's something important here. They said, I really want to feel something change. And so, yes, that's a very good thing to want. And I can say through experience that things will shift and change, but it is that element of believing that you deserve these changes. And that in itself is something to work with when you get into the program, because if we were taught by our parents, our peers, the systems, that we are worthless and that we're never going to amount to anything, which many of us were taught when we were little, that's a lot of deep conditioning and programming to break out of. But it's sitting in our body, it's sitting in the nervous system. So it's important to realize that these things do connect. Someone had asked, has anyone made any significant changes in their relationship with money with this program? 100%. Janet, who is here, and Donnie replied in the chat. Jen's nodding. A lot of our more, let's say, entrepreneur, career-based people, they have found that their relationship to money, yes, has shifted, because it is a need that we have in our current world. And when we realize that our certain needs need to be met, we become a little less worried about asking for these things. And I know that Janet, who was here earlier, said that she was able to, put her prices up and feel good about it. This is exactly what I am worth. And so, yes, the money thing is huge, because we're taught often from a very young age from our parents how to look at money and how to handle money or not handle money. how to be reckless with money, and we start to see it more as an energetic and as a necessity. So yeah, that is definitely something that does shift with time. All right, let's see here. I'm going to call it. I think we've done lots. It's almost been 2 hours. These calls seem to just fly by. Quick reminder again to everyone that today, it's the 19th, is our final day for registration for SBSM, for SmartBody SmartMind. Go with your impulse. It has to feel maybe a little scary. That's normal, but right. And then once we get in, then you work on the fear patterns, the I'm not sure I should be here patterns, all the things that we openly admit will come up as we start to work with the nervous system work. We start with orientation call on Thursday, and then the first module of the program, we call them labs, begins on Sunday. Again, while we are in a 12-week live session, this is a lifetime investment. It's a health investment. And this nervous system work is, not only is it popular right now, it's very essential. And there's a reason why so many people are talking about the nervous system and healing trauma. It's because we really realize that this is the root. This is the holy grail for us to be able to move through and be who we are supposed to be. We're not meant to be living in survival stress 24/7 and our old patterns. We really are meant to be free of that stuff and living in ways that we would say are more thrive-based than survive-based. Of course, my alum who have been here are a testament to that. Again, thank you all for hanging and sticking to the end. Thank you for everyone here who has been listening and asking questions and feeling and engaging. Thanks to my team, Mara, who's been answering questions in the chat. And thanks for Bonnie for bringing them into my attention so I can see them clearly. And to all the alum, thanks for chatting. I didn't expect you guys to be writing in the chat and helping. So thank you so much. And if you do have any follow-up questions, logistics, payments, how things work, email us. All right, so support@irenelyon.com, and we'll get back to you. If there's a more technical question, we will also get back to you regarding healing and just restoring regulation to your system. It's what it's what our system craves. I'll say that. It's what our system craves. When we start to give it to our system, things really do start to shift in really interesting ways. So it has been a pleasure. There's been many of you that have been with me the last week as we talk and learn and talk to people. Thank you everyone for being here, your attention, your presence, your focus. For all of you who are going to join SmartBody SmartMind or who have already joined, we will see you very soon in the hallways of SmartBody SmartMind. And for those who aren't ready yet, that's fully cool. Start with my free resources. This is how many of our alums started. They started with my just watching videos, doing some of the exercises online, doing a class. The 21-day nervous system tune-up is a beautiful way to start if you're not quite ready for this path of SmartBody SmartMind. If you are, wonderful. And if you aren't, then keep hanging with me. Keep hanging in the field. And then when we do this again next year, maybe it will be the right time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.